Welcome to this edition of Able Dead on Air, the one and only program that focuses on the needs, concerns, and achievements of the differently able. I've always been your host, Lawrence Seiler. Arlene is off today. On this fantastic episode, we will focus on the Me2 Orchestra. What are they, who are they, and what they represent here in Vermont. Welcome.
Thank you.
Miss Caroline Whitten.
Good to see you.
And Mr. Ronald Brownstein and Caroline Whitten to
Thank you.
And On Air.
Good
Welcome.
to see you.
Thank you very much. What are the missions and goals of the Me2 Orchestra?
Well, our mission is to, through supportive ensembles and rehearsals and performances, to erase the stigma surrounding mental health issues. And our goals really are, it's multi-layered. We have certain goals within our orchestras, and that comes about because we have people who are living with mental illnesses and people who don't have a diagnosis. And what we want to show there is that people can work very well side by side, whether or not there's a mental health diagnosis involved, because a lot of people in our community don't recognize that that's possible.
Why is it the fact that they don't recognize?
I think because we don't have these conversations.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have these conversations. People are afraid due to the stigma and potentially discrimination surrounding a mental health diagnosis. They don't talk about what they might be living with, and because it's a silent issue, mm-hmm. people they form their opinions around, say, bipolar disorder or schizophrenia around what they hear on the news or see in a movie. And it's a very distorted viewpoint.
Now, both of you can answer this. What is some of the history of Me2? How did you guys get started?
Well, we got started in 2011, and I'd had a history over my career, very uneven, very high points and very low, the best orchestras in the world, and then under the bridge for extended periods.
And you've worked in Europe and some other places as well.
Yeah, a lot of very fancy places and then very not fancy
mm-hmm.
situations. Mm-hmm. And at a certain point, I just got fed up with it, with being discriminated against. So I decided to create my own orchestra, created with people like myself. At the beginning, it was just for me to kind of feel a space that I was safe in, that I wouldn't be judged, that I wouldn't be analyzed or discriminated against. And I found that very, very healing. And originally, it really was for me to heal myself, but as I felt more comfortable sharing myself as a musician and as a person, as someone living with a bipolar disorder, I found there are many people like me, and they started to come to this orchestra, and it grew from there. It's now grown to almost 50 people in Burlington alone, and then about 50 in Boston.
So how do you, this to both of you, how do you really educate people in your work of Me2? Because I understand that you, there's personal stories that people give and mm-hmm. so on and so forth. So if you want to take that.
Yeah, I think the education happens when you create an environment that is safe and stigma-free, so that people, if they want to discuss their diagnosis or maybe what they're feeling on any given day, that they feel safe enough to do that. You know, you can give somebody all the literature in the world, but until they meet somebody who's living with, like Ronald, bipolar disorder, and they see that that person does not look like what I saw on television last night or whatever, that it makes it real and immediate. Mm-hmm. And that's where people start to learn and shed all these negative ideas that they have associated with the diagnosis.
And since you said negative, because a lot of people sometimes are scared of people with mental illness.
Yes.
And we've had numerous shows on suicide prevention and other things with mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the misconceptions around people with special needs when you first meet them?
Well, I think that a lot of people, largely because of media, is they are perceived as being violent,
Mm-hmm.
and not to be trusted, and somehow criminal. They'll break up your house, they'll do everything, but actually, more often than not, people living with a mental illness are more often the victim of a crime rather than a protagonist. So that's,
What do you mean by protagonist?
Um,
Exactly.
They're a victim,
A
not so
victim.
much a perpetrator. Perhaps.
Ah, okay.
that's what I meant.
Now, in terms of music, right? Because this past week we went to the Barry Opera House and we saw. In matter of fact, we're gonna roll some of that footage. What is your favorite piece of music, and how does music really help you get through your mental illness or dealing with Me2? How does that help as far as music is concerned?
Well, my favorite piece is Beethoven Fifth Symphony, especially the fourth movement, because that's the biggest transformation, breakthrough of expression. Up till the Fifth Symphony, all music was really created for classical court composers, kings and queens, and they had to follow certain rules and everything. Everything was very codified. And in Beethoven Fifth Symphony, it just bursts that, and its self-expression was the first concept of the composer as a romantic person who could express himself through his
What's
music.
your favorite piece of music?
I find that question really tough. I don't know that I have one favorite piece. It's usually whatever I happen to be listening to. Like in that moment, it's my favorite. If I were going to be stranded on a desert island and had to have certain recordings, I'd probably go orchestrally. I'd go with Brahms, maybe Mahler, one of the symphonies.
Yeah.
But it's tough. There's so much great music out there.
Okay. In terms of now, the Me2 started exactly when? When did it actually start?
Our first rehearsal was in September 2011 here in Burlington, Vermont.
Yeah, because you guys are originally from you guys live in
Right now we
Massachusetts.
live, live in just outside of Boston in Massachusetts. But we started the Me2 organization here in 2011, and we branched out with an additional orchestra in Boston in the fall of 2014.
Okay. Now, you've worked professionally in Europe, and have you worked with or collaborated with any other people who famous artists like Vangelis?
Well, let's see. I've conducted many of the great orchestras of the world. I conducted the Berlin Philharmonic when I was 23, and I conducted the San Francisco Symphony and the Stuttgart radio orchestras and many radio orchestras in Switzerland and in Norway and in Israel and in Japan. I had the great honor and privilege of being an apprentice of Herbert von Karajan, who was the greatest musician of the century, by all means. And he mainly taught me how to listen and to get the orchestra to listen to each other, which has really become a main theme in the Me2 experience, not only to listen to each other in the music, but to actually hear each other as people. So that's
because when you have when someone has a challenge, it's really good to be a good listener, because once you are a good listener, you know, it brings forth not only do you get to collaborate with people, but you get to, just listen to what they have to say. They're not there. It's like counseling, right? You have to be a good listener to
Right.
understand. And music for you is like counseling, if you will, pretty much, because you're channeling your energy, you're challenging yourself into persevering despite your challenge.
Right. I think you hit on something really important, and something that certainly I experience when I happen to be playing in the orchestra. I live with the challenges of anxiety, this anxiety disorder every day. But you know what? I can't think about that if I'm playing Beethoven. There's no room for anxiety when you're playing Beethoven. You're just so focused on what's going on in that moment, focused on what he's doing on the podium, focused on the sounds around you in the orchestra. So I don't know that it's so much an escape, but it's definitely the opportunity to kind of let the rest of that go and be right there in that moment with other people.
I know we still have some time left, but what is some advice professional advice that you can give to people out there who are living with, or your own personal advice, who are living with mental illness or mental challenges? Because, and another question is, you can answer it or not, but have you always lived with bipolar disorder? And
I've been living with a bipolar disorder since 1985, and it's been a rough road. But in the last 6 years, it's been one steady, even spell, and I'm working with that.
And you have support.
Yeah, I have support, and I have an excellent psychiatrist, and psychiatrist,
Families
psychology.
and support as well.
Yeah, so it all kind of comes together. I just wanted to get back to what you asked about advice.
Yes.
And I think the first advice is to, as you said, get the right people in your team. You need a dedicated partner who's not only dedicated and loves you, but is interested in really finding out what it's all about. The nuts and bolts, how to take care of you at home. And then you need a good psychiatrist who you trust and who do exactly what they say. You don't, not willy-nilly about when to take the medication. You have to follow that person. And if you don't, you should just simply get another psychiatrist. As far as going forward, once you're stable, I think as far as finding your way into music, I think the first thing would be to get a fulfilling job that fulfills your interest and your desires to contribute to society. And then third would be music, because music is really has to be held up, supported by all of those other things. As far as music goes, I think someone would come and play with us because it's such a low pressure and a very enjoyable, supportive environment. So I would never go any further than that, just treatment.
Because also historically, music has helped lots of people. I mean, you have Beethoven, who was deaf. You have many other musical people, such as Julio Iglesias, and the opera singer.
Name it.
I can't name them off the top of my head.
They're all individuals.
Yeah, and they persevered despite their challenges.
Right.
Exactly. Oh,
so,
I see what you mean.
Yeah, in terms of persevering, despite their deafness or despite, what they've gone through. They have huge histories in music. I mean, music brings out the best in people. you know, as they say, sometimes making beautiful music together helps. You know,
It's a great mode of expression.
And-
It's a way to get
and you're-
things out.
So, in terms of Me2, where is your next? I mean, what are your real future goals with the Me2 organization?
Well, the immediate one are to create many affiliate organizations which are not full orchestras, because that's very daunting an idea. We started small with just a small group of people, and then we grew over time, and now we have an orchestra. We're creating affiliate organizations with just maybe a few people, like 5 or 7, that start the germ, and they have the same philosophies and mission as we do. They use our name, and they grow from there little by little, so that over time there will be many, many Me2 orchestras. But at this point, we're just starting to spread small ones to give them a place to start from.
Now, in terms of collaborations, I understand this past Sunday, you guys worked with Washington County Mental Health to put on this show. Why did you guys decide to do that? Was there a main reason behind collaborating with Washington County Mental Health?
Well, they actually extended the invitation to us, and we were thrilled. We had never played in Washington County, and certainly they suggested the opportunity to play at the Barry Opera House, which for us was fabulous. Yeah. So once they extended the invitation, we just start going back and forth and working on, you know, how to build the audience, how to promote the concert, and it ended up being a great collaboration. And that's the kind of thing we've done with other especially mental health organizations around the state of Vermont.
What are some of the ones that some of the concerts that because you were in Colchester yesterday.
With Woodside Juvenile Rehabilitation Center, which is you know, a challenging and a wonderful venue for us. We play in their gymnasium when we go there, and it's operated by the Department of Children and Families. So that's an opportunity for us to play with a population of, you know, 20 or fewer teens who are in the custody of DCF, and, you know, bar none, they are all receiving some type of treatment for trauma or some type of diagnosis that they've received throughout what are normally very difficult childhoods.
For those that, just a little interesting question, a little fun question. Those that want to get into music, despite their challenges, what are some of the pros and cons of because you know, I mean, you're a conductor and you work with the Me2. What are some of the challenges of working in music? Just not forgetting challenges, but like working in music on a general. People that want to
become musicians?
Yeah.
They should just quit. Seriously.
It's too hard.
It's just, well, just to become a musician requires so much discipline. You need to be able to be willing to really donate your life to music in a way that few other fields demand. A minimum of, you know,
years,
10,000 hours a year in the practice room, just perfecting your skill. And
because being a conductor is just not waving your hand and doing stuff.
I know.
More than that.
Yeah. Well, it's about communicating.
Yeah.
And that's more than just hands and feet.
Yeah.
And it's the whole your whole being.
Because there's pros and cons to everything, you know.
It's true.
What has been your your best performance that you did, that Me2 did, like the absolute best?
Do you want to take that? I think we would both say the same thing, probably.
Do you want to say it at the same time? No. What question lead in?
The side by side.
Well, for me, see.
I would say the side by side concert, which took place last year, and we brought the musicians from Boston up to Burlington to literally sit side by side on the stage at the Flynn Center in Burlington, and we performed together.
Yeah.
And it was this amazing confluence of seeing kind of all the relationships in each of those orchestras then collide, you know, together, and all these new friendships being formed. Each of the orchestras had rehearsed the same music separately, but then to bring that together on one stage and in this huge orchestra was just, it was thrilling in a way that, you know, is very different than other performances.
Because they were really collaborating with each other.
Yeah.
And making something just bigger than life.
Does it get, how can I put this, with your, if you don't mind me asking this, with your challenges, does it get frustrating sometimes when you're on stage, and how do you challenge,
Block it out?
block it out or channel it? Channel your frustration.
I feel no frustration when I'm conducting. I only feel this incredibly strong connection with the text, with the music which has been handed down to us for 200 and 300 years. It's so captivating, and it's so that the world just, all of my troubles and all of my challenges, they just go to the ceiling and just leave me alone completely. And then I have a golden hour for the hour after the concert, which is just everything. You feel so great about what you did. And yeah, it's, nothing gets in my way. If anything, I can channel some of my my manic energy and also my depressive energy.
What is the difference, if you don't mind me asking that question? In your opinion, what is the difference? You said
Between manic and depression.
manic
Well,
and
I'm
depression, or manic depressive,
Well,
or
Well, when
both?
I feel like I can draw on my mania. Let me just rephrase that.
Take your time.
I feel that in some way I can use my mania. That's not true either. I don't use it. Help me with this one.
Is this upsetting you?
No, not at all. Just I'm trying to think.
I think it's hard to describe, probably, but
Yeah.
but I mean I recognize
Feeling
those
sad or
energies
feeling
in you.
feeling upset about something.
No. Yeah, my feeling upset or happy or sad, nothing to do with it. It's just the text that I've inherited from the last 200 years. But my mania, which is well controlled, I can still draw on it and put it into that performance in the way that I think people without it can't get it in there as strongly. On the depressed side, I think that a lot of music is very, let's just say, sad. And I feel that I can draw on my past sadness to get an insight into the music in a more deep way.
Well, there was two pieces in my mind that were extremely happy on Sunday's performance. I don't know the name off the top of my head, but the one,
Syncopated Clock.
the syncopated clock,
And
the firework for the
Oh, the Handel Royal.
the Handel Royal fireworks piece,
Yeah, that was amazing.
and Swan Lake.
Swan Lake.
But because it had that, towards the end, it had that
Push.
yeah. So do you tend to do more happy pieces of music, or a little bit of both of sad pieces of music? Because sad can turn into happy, or...
I think that most pieces have a happy and a sad contained in them. It's just let me just start that one over.
Go ahead. It's fine. Because we'll edit this.
We play pieces that are primarily sad. Did I say that? No.
Well, the Royal Fireworks isn't
No,
a sad piece.
I just erased that. I just said exactly the opposite. We perform mainly pieces that are happy, that are uplifting, especially at the end of the concert. We want the audience just to feel great about the music and about the breakthroughs that can happen through music.
Mm-hmm.
But we also program more somber, introspective music that that can, reach people's more deeper emotions.
How do you channel your anxiety through the Me Too performances?
Oh boy, it really is about getting kind of lost in the music
Mm-hmm.
for me. It's really because the anxiety is something that's kind of on my shoulder and always there, and it gets worse and better at different times. But
And what do you do with Me Too?
well, I actually play French horn in the orchestra.
Oh yeah.
Not every concert, not every piece, but my background is in music as well. So I studied French horn, and it's been a real treat for me to play with this orchestra because I actually had given up performing for 18 years. I didn't touch a horn, and it was because all of my experiences around orchestral playing up until that point had made my anxiety worse.
Mm-hmm.
I was having panic attacks. I was not happy. And then Ronald came into my life, and he had this vision about creating an orchestra where that kind of stress wouldn't be a part of the mix. That the whole function would be to be supporting each other and celebrating our achievements and what we can do on the instruments. And with that in mind, I went out and bought an old horn and started playing again. And so for me, it's really been it's turned music on its head for me.
So you've really channeled your bad anxiety, good anxiety, and so on.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that music used to be so challenging for my anxiety, and now it's actually more of an escape and a way for me to kind of soothe myself, actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so do you tend to like happy pieces of music or sad pieces of music?
Boy, I think as a brass player,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to really enjoy playing the things that are big and happy and brassy, and have big notes at the end, and that's a lot of fun to play. As an audience member, though, I enjoy those numbers as well, but I also enjoy like a big lush string piece that maybe provides me with the space to be a little more introspective and kind of think through some things that I'm feeling. And so it's all good and has its place.
So why did you join Me2? Was there I know Ronald came into your life, but what was the main reason that really drew you into the Me2 organization?
I think it was because Me2 gave me a chance to rediscover my love of music without all the anxiety and depression that I had been experiencing before when I played. It was really taking music and just dropping it into a completely new, stigma-free setting. And for me, since I hadn't had that for a couple of decades before, I didn't care about music as much. But this, for me, I was watching Ronald, working with the orchestra over the weeks and thinking, for the first time in 2 decades, that I really wanted to be making music again.
Mm-hmm. But what made you really quit? Or, all kidding aside, you said quit in the beginning of the interview.
Yeah. Well, and I think it gets back to what Ronald was saying. I mean, it's such a tough way to make a living, and that I'm the child of musicians, and I always thought that that's how I would make a living, that I would be playing the French horn and making a living. And the reality of that is that it's incredibly stressful and incredibly difficult to get a good paying job.
Yeah, certain cities I've seen walking in New York, because I'm originally a New Yorker.
Right.
And here in Vermont, you see people with their guitar cases in the street, and people throw money at, because they're trying to make some money at what they do.
And often they can make more money playing, gigging out on the street, busking, as they say, out on the street for a few hours than somebody can do, teaching lessons or whatever.
Have you done that?
I haven't done it because I never got, I played for a couple of years after college, but really never was in a position where I had to make my living just playing music. Mm-hmm. And for me, I reached that point where the panic and anxiety I had around it was so great that I discovered that I really love the administrative side of things, and how, these challenges like how do you build an organization? How do you raise the money? How do you market it to people? So I started going into
So you
that
didn't
side.
you didn't start as a struggling musician, right?
Well, I guess I thought that was going to be my start. That's how it was going to be, but I got out pretty quickly.
Did you have any struggling moments in your career at first? And how did you deal with them?
Not at first. I think that I went to Juilliard.
Yes.
And then after I graduated, I won first prize gold medal in the most important conducting competition in the world.
Which is what?
The Herbert von Karajan International Conducting Competition.
Yeah.
And it's held in Berlin with the Berlin Philharmonic.
Mm-hmm.
And so it went off like a rocket. And it was that way, for many years, until I started to have, people would say, something's wrong here. It's going too high. He's just off the charts, and they started to lose confidence in me because they couldn't handle me. And then there would also be periods where I would, just be so tired I could barely get out of bed when I'm depressed, and I couldn't go, or I would get paranoid and think that there were conspiracy theories against me and all of these kind of things. So
the paranoia of it,
yeah,
right? Of being on. Did you ever have any?
When I would be in a rough period, I started to feel paranoid, and it was often well based.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever had any paranoia on stage?
No.
No.
I don't feel anything on stage.
No.
I'm only feeling the interaction with the musicians,
yeah,
and hoping that the audience can feel the same thing.
Before we end, and we show the footage of the Barry Opera House, can you tell us where people can reach you at Me2 if they want to get in touch?
Absolutely. Yeah, we our website is www.Me2 Orchestra, and that's ME and the numeral 2 orchestra.org.
Mm-hmm.
So very easy to find us online. The phone number there is actually my cell phone number, 802-238-8369. And all the email contact information is there as well. So we'd love to hear from people.
Okay, let's take a look at some footage from the Barry Opera House and the Me2 organization. Let's take a look at this. Before we end, we'd like to say thank you again to
Thank
the
you
Me
for
Too,
having us.
for the Me2 organization. And, well, that puts an end to this edition of Ableton on Air. I'm Lawrence Seiler. See you next time. Play some music.